Hey there, grasshoppers. So this week the tutorial is all about color correction, and I'm going to give you a basic method for doing some color correction that's sort of related to what we did in previous weeks on using levels. Um, and here's the basic process. Step number one is, by the way, we're going to go through several of these pictures. Here's the first one. I'll go through that one and a couple of more here. We'll go through that one as well. Some of this will be homework. And by the way, these files should be already be on Kong, so this shouldn't be a problem for you. And so the first part of this process is to play a little bit of detective. In other words, what clues can we figure out about the picture? I think we can safely say, if you look at this picture long enough, that this picture was taken where it's warm. And use that as the guide here for moving on. So let's go to, let me go turn on my mask here. There we go. I will go over to adjustments, and we will use this guy here, which is curves. And you know, it looks like a histogram there, and you can see that we're kind of low in the darks. We're pretty well set on the highs. This is based on this out in point, not out point here, black and white, and what looks like the histogram. So we're going to change a few things. Now, like when we worked with levels, we will not work in the composite channel. We will work individual channels like this. But we're going to start off with just picking out the lights and the darks here. Now, it's a little weird because I've got my mask on, but this is just to point out the tools. We will start with this black eyedropper, and we will use the white eyedropper. So I'll just click here. Let me turn off my mask so you can see what's happening. What I want to figure out is what should be the darkest portion of the image. Now, obviously, shadows, this area under here, this is my favorite spot down here. Um, the wheel well is a good spot. This little section here in the window is good. Some people like this stuff over here. Some people like the gaps back in the rock back here. But here's the deal. What we're looking to do is we're looking to force values into other areas. So for instance, we're trying to force this area down here to be the blackest or the darkest in the image. So if I click there, we get a bit more contrast. It tells that area to be dark, and it takes everything else down as well. And what's happened is, if you look over here, these are all the other channels. There's this, by the way, this document is CMYK, no kidding. And you'll see how this relates to RGB in a few minutes. But all of these lines are representative of the different four channels, C, M, Y, and K, cyan, magenta, yellow, and black. And what we've done is we took the dark corner anchor point there, and we've just basically moved it up, just like we kind of did with the levels last week. And notice that it's even with the foothills of that mountain. So we've already picked up on the contrast. Let me turn that off for a minute. Okay. Now let's use the other eyedropper, which is over here, which is the white eyedropper. And now we'll go choose what should be the lightest portion of the image. Now, some people say that this spot is the lightest. Some people like the license plate, but that's really not the lightest. In fact, let's do this. Let's click on the license plate, and look what happens. It forces this area to be part of the brightest thing. And what it does is it forces everything else to be bright as well, which is totally blowing out the details here. Look what happens. The corner points here for my curves are just wacky. So that's way too much. Fortunately, I can continue to click on areas that should be the brightest thing. Now here's a bright thing here. Let's click on this little spot right here. And that changes things a little bit. Here's the rule. When it comes to clicking and finding your light spots and your dark spots, is you need to find something that is of neutral value, meaning it is grayscale, meaning white through gray through black. You really don't want to have any sort of color involved. In fact, here's a great example. I will click definitely here in the yellow stuff. And look what happens. It basically tells this stuff that it wants to give you the opposite of what you want. Well, in the scheme of how Photoshop works, the opposite of yellow is blue, which is why we're now getting a very strong blue going on here. In fact, way too much. So even when you click on this little spot right here, which is the specular highlight that's there from the sun, what happens is there is a tint of blue in there. So we really don't want to go introducing blue into this scenario. Now my favorite spot is going to be down here on the wheel well. So in fact I like to click down here. 3, 2, 1 click. We get a nice boost there. If you want to click around and maybe find a slightly brighter spot, you might get some mileage out of that, but we're in the zone right there. So all we've done is done pretty much what we would do with the levels tool. So what we're going to do is just turn this off just for a moment. Just click this off, and that's the original, kind of cloudy, kind of flat. By turning that back on, we get some nice contrast, which is cool. And sorry, I'm checking my time. We've only got 10 minutes on these YouTube videos. So the next thing is we need to go through each of these curves and start playing with them. Okay, so I'll go up here to my composite channel. Obviously we don't want to work in the composite channel. And now I'll go to cyan. Now here's how this works. So I'm going to turn this off because I'm going to stay mostly here so you can see what's happening. You can see that the dark point up here and the light point down here have come in from the corner. I do recommend that you don't try to move them up like this. It starts to add weird values in there. So there's only one channel available in here. Now I'm going to click and add an anchor point, which is what I've done just there. Just clicked. And now when I click and drag, if I drag to the upper left, I'm adding what color? Well, I'm in the cyan channel, so that's what I'm adding. If I drag to the lower right, it's adding another color, which is red. So here in Photoshop, cyan is the opposite of red. Okay? So when I go up left, I'm adding cyan and I'm cutting red. When I go down to red, I'm adding red but cutting cyan. Okay? Now, we said that this was shot someplace warm. We use that as a guideline, not a rule, but just a guideline. Okay? So I'm looking at what I've got going on here. Let me turn up my values there. It's like, what do I want as a visual designer here? What do I want to show more of? Okay. Well, I'm pretending that this image is probably a commercial shot that will be used for some sort of commercial ad. Okay. So how am I going to guide the human eye to focus on the fact that this is the product, the Ford Escape here? Okay, and the answer is, well, look what happens. If I push this towards cyan, well, we get a lot of green down here in the shadows. We get the same kind of thing going on up here. It's making it greener, blue greener. It is kind of adding some detail to the rock, you know. But what does it look like if we just go a little bit over here? Okay, so we've pushed this into the warmer side of things. The truck got warmer. The rock got warmer. The shadow isn't as much of a problem now. There's still a tint of cyan back there, but I think that was mostly in there to begin with. Okay, so we need to go one side or the other. And by the way, when you write these curves like this, that's what I'm doing, is writing a curve, is we want to make slight curves. Now typically I'll start off with a great big fat curve like that, and it looks really wacky. Excuse me, and then I will go back and forth and then kind of settle on a very subtle location. Now, right there, I'm pushing it just towards the red side. You can kind of spot that there's a little bit of red going on there. Okay, that is pretty much it. You're just writing curves. All we're doing now that we've set up our contrast with the eyedroppers, we've done that first. So all we're doing with these channels, is going through and finding a way to emphasize what we need to emphasize. In this case, probably the truck, mostly the truck. And why don't we stop here, then we'll move on to the next channels in the next movie.